Hello, my name is Jalen Avila, and in this video we are going to discuss how to identify an intrauterine pregnancy using your ultrasound. Your probe of choice is going to be the curvilinear transducer, although a phased array transducer would work, and in an early first trimester pregnancy, a endocavitary transducer would also work. If you want more specifics over the basic technique for both, please check out the general OB scanning 5-minute sono video. Now, with regards to placement, you want to use that curvilinear transducer if you can, and I usually start with a sagittal approach, that is probe marker facing up towards the patient's head. I place the back end of the transducer on the pubic symphysis, and usually if you're midline, you can, if it is intrauterine, identify that uterus. This is placenta, and right here we have a fetus. Now, there are certain findings that are more likely to be seen at a specific time during pregnancy, and you can see them here. The earliest sign of a pregnancy is a gestational sac seen between 4 and 6 weeks. The first sign of a definitive intrauterine pregnancy, however, is that yolk sac. So that's actually the most important one, because you can have what's called a pseudo-gestational sac, where you will see what looks like a gestational sac inside the uterus in the setting of somebody that doesn't have an intrauterine pregnancy, such as what can be seen in an ectopic pregnancy. So keep that in mind, and being able to adequately assess the patient's last menstrual period is important to help with that. This is what a gestational sac looks like. This is the uterus right here, and you see that there's a bit of a decidual reaction that is this hyperechoic border here with a small gestational sac. This is the earliest finding, but it does not rule in a intrauterine pregnancy. I'm going to take a brief pause here just to let you know that all of our content is on the coreultrasound.com website. That is Ultrasound Podcast, 5-Minute Sono, Ultrasound of the Week, Clip Bank, and we also have our courses page where we have the Core Ultrasound Fundamentals and Core Ultrasound Question Bank, where you have 3,200 questions with feedback, including narrated videos explaining the question. Check it out, and back to your video. There's a way to tell if this gestational sac is actually in the uterus or not, or if it is associated with an intrauterine pregnancy, and you can look at the FEEDS criteria. Now, I actually struggle to find any data supporting the FEEDS criteria, and I couldn't even find an original reference, but it is mentioned in the AAFP guidelines for residencies, and it does seem to be a bit helpful here. So let's talk about it. Now, it being fundal, that has to do with it actually being in the fundus of the uterus, which is kind of the top part right here. Now let's talk about what that looks like on an actual ultrasound. This is a endocavitary or transvaginal ultrasound. Here, this is the fundus, and over here is the body, and the cervix is down here. And you can see here that it's more towards the fundal area, which is good. We want an elliptical or round gestational sac. This is good over here. And you see here, there's a bit of a kind of point right here. This is less good. Now, this doesn't mean that the patient definitely is going to not have an intrauterine or successful intrauterine pregnancy. This just makes it less likely that it is, or said differently, this is more likely to go on to term and be a normal intrauterine pregnancy. Now, this eccentric to the endometrial stripe, this is actually something that is important, and it has to do with where exactly that gestational sac is located. Now, I zoomed in here. This is actually using a linear transducer over the abdominal wall, which gives you a much higher resolution image. And it is actually recommended if you have a patient that has a lower BMI and a very early pregnancy, because you can see that gestational sac a lot earlier. Now, looking at this, we have the myometrium of the uterus right here. We have the endometrial stripe just above that gestational sac. That's what eccentric to the endometrial stripe means. It is not inside the endometrial stripe. It is just on the outside of that endometrial stripe, which is what we're seeing here. That gestational sac is inside. the meat of the myometrium rather than inside the uterine cavity itself. Now, the decidual reaction, I alluded to it earlier, and that's basically this hyperechoic border of a gestational sac. That is a decidual reaction, and it's good. Now, with the size here, we want the size to be greater than 4 millimeters, and we can look at the mean sac diameter. That is looking at the length times the height times the depth, and look at the average of those values. And if we're greater than 4 millimeters, it's more likely to be a good gestational sac, which you can see here on this one. The size here is much bigger than that 4 millimeters. It's 1.85 centimeters. So here they are again, the feeds criteria to help you know if a gestational sac is a good gestational sac or a less good gestational sac. Now, the first sign of a definitive intrauterine pregnancy is the yolk sac. It kind of looks like a little Cheerio. You can actually tell right here we have a good gestational sac. It is about oval in shape. We got a decidual reaction, and we can see here this little Cheerio right here. That is the yolk sac, and that is the first sign of an intrauterine pregnancy. Now here we have a gestational sac, we have a decidual reaction. This is bladder, this is a sagittal view here. Fundus, we have down here the cervix with the vaginal stripe over here, and it's kind of hard to tell if there's anything actually in there. And you can do one of two things. You can just decrease the depth on that curvilinear transducer, or as I showed you earlier, you can actually look with the linear transducer. And typically that's if that gestational sac is less than 5 centimeters or so from the anterior abdominal wall, which we are seeing here. Switch to that linear transducer and look at that high definition right here. You can easily see that little Cheerio of that gestational sac with what is likely the very early fetus right here with a little cardiac activity right there. You definitely can use an endocavitary transducer as well, but the endocavitary transducer is a bit more invasive. So if you can get by with using the curvilinear or the linear transducer, probably more comfortable for the patient. Next, let's talk about the fetal pole, which we're seeing right here, just a tiny little baby. This right here is the placenta. This is the uterus right there, a little bladder over here. This is the actual fetus itself. You can see even a little flicker of a heartbeat there in the chest. That is an intrauterine pregnancy. Now let's talk about how you can identify if the patient has a pregnancy failure. There's a couple of things you can look for. If you see a fetal pole and there is a crown rump length of greater or equal to 7 millimeters without a fetal heart rate, if there is a mean sac diameter greater or equal to 25 millimeters without an embryo, if you see no fetal heart rate and a fetal pole greater than 2 weeks with a gestational sac without a yolk sac, more likely to be a pregnancy failure. And then if you see no fetal heart rate greater or equal to 11 days with a yolk sac, that is a patient that is likely to have pregnancy failure. Next, let's talk about how to perform that crown rump length that we talked about earlier. This is using the linear transducer. So we're getting this high resolution image. We are identifying that fetal pole. We are hitting calculators, and then we are going to the crown rump length. To get this, make sure that you are in the OBGYN setting and you just basically measure the top to the bottom of that fetal pole. That gives you the crown, top of the head, to the rump, the little backside of the baby. And that will give you an estimated gestational age. You can see here it is 7 weeks and 0 days. Now for the fetal heart rate calculation, we're identifying that fetal pole, and we're not going to be using our pulsed wave Doppler because that is a little more energy and could be harmful for the patient. And what we're going to do here is we're going to hit the M mode, and then we're going to move the M mode cursor over this fluttering thing over here. That is the fetal heart. We're going to hit M mode again and identify movement, which we can easily see right here. This is the fetal heartbeat. And then we can hit our measurement button and go from one of those movements to the other. And we can see here that we have calculated a fetal heart rate of 140 beats per minute. Now, sometimes some of the machines will actually want to do an average. So if you see this 2 in parentheses, it means that you want to skip one and go to the next one over to calculate that fetal heart rate. Now, I did mention it before, and some practitioners will use that pulsed wave Doppler, and there are some settings in which this is appropriate. But if you can get the fetal heart rate using M mode, which is the exact same amount of energy to the fetus as just using your grayscale ultrasound, use that instead of using the more energy mode of that pulsed wave Doppler. Gives you the same data. This is likely more safe than using the higher energy mode. This is how you apply those measurements we just talked about for the identification of a viable intrauterine pregnancy.